And it happened that, when he had completed speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan adhered to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him like his own soul. And Saul took him that day, and would not permit him to return to his father's house. Then David and Jonathan formed a pact, for he loved him like his own soul. And Jonathan took off the coat that he was wearing, and he gave it to David, with the rest of his garments, even to his sword and bow, and even his belt. Also, David went out to do everything whatsoever that Saul sent him to do, and he conducted himself prudently. And Saul set him over men of war. And he was acceptable in the eyes of the entire people, and most of all in the sight of the servants of Saul. Now when David returned, after he had struck down the Philistine, the women went out from all the cities of Israel, leading the singing and dancing, rejoicing with timbrels and bells, so as to meet King Saul. And the women sang, as they played, saying, Saul has struck down 1,000, and David 10,000. Then Saul became exceedingly angry, and this word was displeasing in his eyes. And he said, They have given David 10,000, and to me they gave only 1,000. What is left for him, except the kingdom itself? Therefore Saul did not regard David with a good eye, from that day and thereafter. Then, on the next day, the evil spirit from God assailed Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of his house. And David played with his hand, just as at every other time. And Saul held a lance in his hand. And he threw it, thinking that he would be able to fix David to the wall. And David stepped aside twice, from before his face. And Saul feared David because the Lord was with him, but he had withdrawn from Saul. Therefore Saul sent him away from himself, and he made him tribune over 1,000 men. And he entered and departed in the sight of the people. Also, David acted prudently in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. And so, Saul saw that he was exceedingly prudent, and he began to be wary of him. But all of Israel and Judah loved David, for he entered and departed before them. And Saul said to David, Behold, my elder daughter Merab. I will give her to you as wife. Only be a valiant man, and fight the wars of the Lord. Now Saul was considering within himself, saying, Let not my hand be upon him, but let the hands of the Philistines be upon him. Then David said to Saul, Who am I, and what is my life, and what is my father's kinship within Israel, that I should be the son-in-law of the king? Then it happened that, at the time when Merab, the daughter of Saul, was to be given to David, she was given to Adriel, the Meholathite, as wife. Now Michal, the other daughter of Saul, loved David. And this was reported to Saul, and it pleased him. And Saul said, I will give her to him, so that she may be a stumbling block to him, and so that the hand of the Philistines may be upon him. And Saul said to David, In 2 things you shall be my son-in-law today. And Saul commanded his servants to speak to David privately, saying, Behold, you are pleasing to the king, and all his servants love you. Now therefore, be the son-in-law of the king. And the servants of Saul spoke all these words to the ears of David. And David said, Does it seem a small matter to you, to be the son-in-law of the king? I am but a poor and unimportant man. And the servants reported to Saul, saying, David has spoken words in this manner. Then Saul said, Speak in this way to David, the king does not have need of any dowry, but only 100 foreskins from the Philistine men, so that he may be vindicated from the enemies of the king. So did Saul think to deliver David into the hands of the Philistines. And when his servants had repeated to David the words that Saul had spoken, the word was pleasing in the eyes of David, so that he would become son-in-law of the king. And after a few days David, rising up, went with the men who were under him, and he struck down 200 men of the Philistines. And he brought their foreskins, and he counted them out for the king, so that he might be his son-in-law. And so Saul gave to him his daughter Michal as wife. And Saul saw and understood that the Lord was with David. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, loved him. And Saul began to fear David all the more. And Saul became the enemy of David every day. And the leaders of the Philistines departed. And from the beginning of their departure, David conducted himself more prudently than all the servants of Saul, and his name became exceedingly celebrated.